Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Welcome to this week's MMA Mental podcast. This week I have a great lineup. I've managed to get 7 interviews, all with winners off the Ultimate Fight Night 55 or Ultimate Fight Night 56 weekend. So all coming straight in from Australia or Brazil. We've had, like I say, 7 great guests on. First up, we've got Chris Clements. He tells us he was disappointed with his performance, not as pretty as he planned. And then we speak to Colby Covington, who broke his foot in the first minute of the fight on his way to a round 3 stoppage. Then we talk to Louis Smolka. He talks about making history twice. And then we have smiling Sam Alvey. He calls out Dan Kelly, or he wants to continue to be off the cast of Tough 17. And then I speak to Dan Kelly, and he responds to being called out by Sam Alvey. And then I speak to Anthony Perosh, looking for a matchup with Fabio Maldonado. And then last of all, my final guest is Jake Matthews, and he'd like to face next Joe Ellenberger, as he feels it'd make for a real good fight. I hope you enjoy all these interviews. I'm now joined by Chris Clements, who's coming off of an impressive victory, beating Vik Grujic via a round 1 stoppage due to punches, taking his pro record to 12-5 and his UFC record to 2-1. Chris, thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, anytime.
Congratulations on your second UFC victory.
Thank you.
Now, it's fair to say you were facing a fighter who's known for being very aggressive in Vik Grujic. What was your views on him as an opponent?
I figured he'd come out aggressive and strong, but I noticed he kind of slows down quite a bit as the rounds go later. So I just figured I'd fly out the storm in the beginning, let him use a lot of energy, try and take me down. I knew he wasn't going to try and stand up with me. If he did try, he would change his mind really quick as soon as he felt my power, my speed. So it played out exactly as I planned, just a lot faster than I had planned. So I figured I'd let him waste his energy holding up against the fence. I landed a couple good knees. I heard him grunt after one of them. So I knew he was wasting a lot of energy and getting tired up there. So I just kind of baited him and waited my time out until it was time to strike. And he ducked his head down right into that knee, and it was just, after I seen him, bleed, I got to go in for the kill. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely. I want to go into that more detail of that with you. We'll talk a little about that in a little bit. But what was it like for you facing an Australian in Australia?
You know what? The Australian crowd was amazing. Of course, they cheered bigger for their hometown guy. But after the fight, I felt like I really did my job and turned the fans. They're happy with me after and happy with the performance I gave them. So. After the fight was over, I pretty much gave 5 high fives to every single person I walked by all the way back. So, and then after that night, I took about 100 pictures up in the lobby. I had people recognize me on the streets, and in the bar later, I was having a beer at McDonald's later that night. I think I got recognized more in Australia than I did in my own when I fought in my own province in Ontario. So.
It was good to get a reaction like that. Now, you're known for your stand-up. Was it always your game plan to keep the fight standing?
Yeah, I do train ground. Probably 70% of my training is on the ground. I just like punching people, and it's just to me, it's just the quicker way to end the fight is with my hands. So I just tend to stay up there.
Now, Grujic got you down quite early in the fight. Were you surprised to be on your back so early?
Well, I was, but it really wasn't him. I was working on that underhook over and over and over again. I knew he was going to clinch up with me. And I was working so much on digging my hips in deep, but the same mistake that I made when he grabbed a hold of me was the same mistake I made in training. Is I kept stepping my foot to the outside instead of the inside. So I went for that exactly as I planned to do. I just stepped in the wrong spot and it caught my balance off, so his leg kind of tripped me because he wasn't really getting me. It wasn't a takedown position for him because it actually fell to his overhook side, not his underhook side. So.
Now you managed
to. But then when I hit the ground, on the ground, though, I was very surprised at how strong he was. He's a very physically strong man. So.
Yeah. You managed to get back to your feet quite quick, to be fair, and you both landed some big punches. Did he land anything that rocked you?
No, I didn't even know I got hit. I think it's by anything except for a couple of little things he was kind of doing up against the cage when he was kind of swatting up at me, more annoying than anything.
Now, the beginning of the end was the big knee. So starting with the knee, can you talk us through the end of the fight?
Yeah, I noticed he was ducking his head down a lot when he was trying to go for the takedown. I actually tested it out one time. I put my hand on the back of his head to see if it was open, to try and get 2 hands on the back of his head. And once I got the one hand secured, I was like, okay, if I get both hands on him, he's in a lot of trouble. So I just reached over, and the tie clinch was perfectly right there, and his head was already down low. So the knee hit him, but I didn't really feel it make contact. I just seen him go back and stagger, and then once I see him stagger, I couldn't let him off the hook. I had to finish him right then and there. So all in all, I'm actually kind of disappointed in my performance because it wasn't as pretty as I planned, and I'm a good striker. I have a lot of different tools in my box. I wanted to put on more of a show with more clean techniques, but at the same time, I have that fighter's instinct in me to go for the kill and just kind of scrap. So my instincts came out. So.
Now, all your wins previously, apart from the one, have come via TKO. So what was it like to get your first stoppage victory in the UFC?
Well, that part was great. Going into the UFC, I stopped every opponent I ever had. And my first fight in the UFC, I don't know how I did not stop Keith Wisniewski. I landed some of the biggest shots I've ever landed on my life on that guy, and he didn't even look like I touched him. But I was very disappointed to not, be able to go and finish somebody when I was so used to finishing somebody. So to finally, get back on track and go back to being the way I'm used to being, feels really good.
Now, the card was record-breaking, with all 11 fights ending within the distance. What was it like to be a part of such a great card?
Yeah, I didn't realize that at first because I wasn't, I didn't watch a couple fights after mine, so I didn't really know the outcome, but I found out it was history, and, it's always great when you find out you're a part of history. So that part's exciting, but at the same time, it was really disappointing because you're not going to win a fight at a night bonus or knock out a night bonus when everybody else was getting knocked out too. So it made the competition real stiff.
It was a crazy card to watch. Now, how did you feel after the fight? And ideally, when you'd like to get back into the octagon, is there any injuries?
I have nothing wrong with me at all. I got a little bit of a sore foot for some reason. I have no idea why. I had a sore foot. I feel 100%. I felt great right after. I'd like to fight right away, but I have 2 young kids, and my wife's on maternity leave right now, but she's going back to work soon. So, have to kind of figure out the home life before I can go and jump into another training camp because it puts a lot of tension on the family. So.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. Now, the welterweight division is completely stacked. Any ideas on who you'd like to face next?
No, honestly, I don't even know who half the people are in the welterweight division right now. There's so many fighters, I can't keep track of them all. I'm also debating on dropping down to lightweight as well. So,
how much of a cut would it be if you were to drop down to lightweight?
It all depends. I can walk around at 190. Normally, I walk around 210. That's just because I drink too much beer and eat pizza when I'm not training. But I could ideally stay in shape and walk around at 190, 185. I'm probably one of the smallest guys in the welterweight division. I guarantee I am with reach-wise, and it's hard to be a striker with a barely a 70-inch reach. I think some of the women in the bantamweight division have a longer reach than I do.
So you're gonna have a look, talk, and see if it's if it'd be a good cut for you. Do you think it'd be a cut you could do?
Yeah, I could manage the cut. The day of weigh-ins, I went in the hot tub for about 20, 25 minutes, and then I got out of the tub and weighed myself, and I was 3 pounds underweight. So I'm pretty sure I could make lightweight if I, just put my mind to it and stayed on track.
Well, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be a good move for you. There's, both divisions are stacked, but if you're giving up such a size advantage at welterweight, it just makes sense to drop down.
Yeah, especially when I thought if Grujic was closest in height to me, he was very strong. He looked like he probably outweighed me by 15 pounds. Most people said by the time they've seen us lock up, but height-wise, he was the closest I've had. I think Wonder Boy and Matt Riddle are close, 6'2", so yeah. It's a big difference to my 5'9.5".
Well, congratulations on your win. It was great to see you get such a great stoppage, and I really appreciate you giving me your time.
Oh, anytime.
Before we let you go, Chris, just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Is there anyone you want to thank, and also your sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
Yeah, everybody follow me on Twitter. It's Menace Clements. And I'd say add me to Facebook, but I already have quite the waiting list. I'm full. I can't add anybody else on there as well at the moment. And I just want to thank all my training partners, my coaches at Adrenaline Training Center. And Faisal the King Rahman, he's actually my doctor, but he really hooks me up and takes care of me and gets all my medicals and stuff done for me. And without him fighting would be a big headache. So big shout out to him.
Well, I can't wait to see you step back in again. I hope it's. I'd like to see you give a shot at lightweight. So I think it'll be really interesting.
Thanks. Hopefully I can make it.
I'm now joined by Colby Covington. Colby's coming off of a second UFC victory, beating Wagner Silva via round 3 submission, rear naked choke, taking his pro record to 7-0, and his UFC record to 2-0. Colby, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Congratulations on a second, not just a UFC win, but a second UFC stoppage as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now let's talk a little bit about the build up to the fight. Now you were facing Wagner Silva, so going into the fight, what did you know about him?
Going into the fight, I just heard some things. He's a strong fighter. He's a jiu-jitsu fighter, and I didn't really get to see much film on him, but I knew he was gonna be ready for a tough fight. Fighting in front of his home fans. So, I was just for worst case scenario.
What was it like as well? I was going to say, you talk about the home fans. What was it like facing a Brazilian in Brazil? Because of course the Brazilian fans are known to be very passionate.
Oh man, it was tough. It definitely took me off my game plan a little bit. Just the fans were booing real hard, and they were saying things in Portuguese that I had a Brazilian translate for me in my corner. Glover Teixeira translated. They were telling me that they wanted me to die, that I was going to die. So, it was tough, but it was under the circumstances. It was good. I really feel like it's going to be a good experience for my career.
Absolutely, and of course, as you are in the big leagues now, you're going to probably get to travel around quite a lot. You're going to come up against stuff quite often. So, now you talk about his ground game. What was your game plan going in? Because of course, you're known for your strong ground game as well.
Yeah, I know I have a strong ground game. I put it up there with anybody in the world. Not to be cocky or anything, but I train with a lot of high level black belts. I'm training under the tutelage of Ricardo Laborio, and you don't get much better than there is in the jiu-jitsu world than a guy like Ricardo Laborio. I felt comfortable if it went to the ground, but I definitely wanted to showcase my striking a little bit more in that fight. But it was affected a little bit after I broke my foot in the first minute of the fight throwing a kick. So, but it was a great experience, and I'm putting myself up there with anybody.
I wasn't aware of your broken foot, so talk to us a little bit about that. What happened with your foot? Sorry.
I threw a kick, and it landed on his elbow within the first round, and the first minute, third kick, and I broke my foot. So They got me suspended right now for 6 months, but until doctor's clearance. So
yeah. Ow, God, that's bound to have an effect on your performance. So did you change your game plan because of that, or?
Yeah, I think so. At the end of round one, I talked to my corner. I told him, it's kind of bothering me, but they said, don't worry about that. Let's, just keep the pressure on him. I tried to, definitely slow down the fight, make it a dirty fight, put it up against the cage, and put some things. So, it could affect my performance a little bit, but, I just wanted to do what I had to do to get the win.
Of course, yeah. Now, in the opening round, you looked solid on the feet. You also scored, I think I counted two good takedowns, and you worked from top position. Apart from the fact, of course, of your foot injury, how did you feel the first round went?
I thought that, I controlled that first round. I threw a head kick that I saw his eyes kind of daze a little bit with one of the first head kicks I kicked. So I feel like I was controlling the first round, and he felt definitely a lot stronger than the first round, but I knew I just had to wear on him, and I know rounds 2 and 3 are always going to be good rounds for me because I always come in well conditioned.
Now, in the second round, you worked really well in the clinch. It's obvious to everyone watching the fight that your wrestling was proven to be the biggest factor in the fight. Now, going into the fight, how confident were you that your wrestling would play such a big factor in this fight?
I feel comfortable, in a lot of fights, and most fights out there, that my wrestling is always going to be more. I'm going to feel more comfortable with that and have the superior edge in the wrestling department than a lot of the fighters in the welterweight division. So, I'm always prepared. That's always a backup plan. But I'm getting better every day in my striking, and I'm becoming more of a well-rounded fighter each and every day.
Now, I've looked at a few of the media outlets, and I think most media outlets had scored the first 2 rounds to you, because you were taking the fight wherever you wanted it to take, basically. But we have seen sometimes where the judges have favoured a hometown fighter. Was that something you were worried about going to the third round?
I was definitely worried about that. I think there's been a lot of robberies in the judges' hands, and the UFC tells us, Joe Silva told us, came backstage and came in our locker room and said, "Don't leave it to the judges. You won't like the result." So, that definitely was playing in my head all night. I knew I wanted to get a finish. Before the fight, I got down there. I knew I had to finish a guy like that. Doesn't matter how 3 rounds go. You can't put anything past that Brazilian commission. So, yeah, definitely it was a big factor in my head going that third round that I knew I'd broken him down and wore him down. I needed to get the finish.
Now, after dominating the first 2 rounds, you did make sure of the win, of course, with the rear naked choke. Talk us through the finish.
It's a position I've been working on with one of my cornermen, Mike Brown, who's kind of someone who has helped me along my journey, and he works a lot on my grappling, some submission stuff, and we've been working on that same move where you take the back and you pull them in, put the hooks in, and get the rear naked choke, and we went palm to palm, and then eventually we sunk in the rear naked. But I've been practicing that submission for like the last couple of months with Mike Brown. I just knew once I got to that position that I could finish the fight.
I mean, you mentioned some of the people you've been training with there. How much does it impact your game working with people like Glover Teixeira and Mike Brown, who of course have both been, legends in the sport?
Oh man, it completely changes the game. Not just as far as technically, but mentally. They've been in tough fights. They've been in any fight you could ever imagine. They've been through it all. So just to have them in my corner and have them talk to me and give them their advice and learn from them, man, I'm really blessed.
Now, looking back on the fight, I don't know if you've watched the fight back or not, but how pleased were you with your performance?
I haven't looked back on the fight, but I could tell you that I'm not pleased with it. I'm never ever going to be pleased with a lot of performances unless they're first round KOs. So when I look back on it, I'm sure I'll see a lot of things that I'll learn from, and it'll help better suit me for the future. But definitely, I have a lot to work on.
Now, the next thing I was going to ask you about was about injuries, but of course we've covered this earlier on. So I know you mentioned about your broken foot. So taking that into consideration then, and knowing how serious the injury is, ideally then, when are you likely to get back into the octagon, or when would you feel you'd be ready to get back into the octagon?
My foot should, I talked to the UFC doctor after the fight. They said, 3-4 weeks and it'll be healed up and, get signed and good to go. So, I'd like to get back in there around like February, March at the latest. I got a birthday February 22nd, so I'd love to fight before my birthday or a little bit after. Somewhere in that time range would be great.
Now, you're now 2-0 in the UFC. Your division, the welterweight division, is absolutely stacked with talent, as is all of the divisions. Any ideas on who you'd like to face next?
That's up to my management team, Sucker Punch Entertainment. I leave that in their hands, and I just fight whoever they put in front of me.
Well, Colby, I really appreciate you giving me your time today. It was great watching you fight at the weekend. It was a brilliant win, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for your time.
Before we let you go, Colby, I'd like to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. So is there anyone you want to thank? And there's a lot of people that help you get ready for the fights. And also mention out, you can also shout out any sponsors you want, and also mention your Facebook and your Twitter.
Yeah, I'd like to give a big thanks to my team, American Top Team. They helped me prepare me to be the best that I can be. And Mike Brown and Glover Teixeira, my cornerman, and Ricardo Laboya, who's a great fatherly figure to me. My family, of course. Without them, none of this is possible. And I'd like to say thanks to my management team, Sucker Punch Entertainment, Brian Butler, Shu Harada, Brian Hamper. And my Twitter is at Colby Cov MMA, and my Instagram and Facebook is just my name, Colby Covington.
Well, I hope you heal up soon, Colby, and I look forward to seeing you step back into the octagon.
Sounds good, brother.
I am now joined by Louis Smolka, who beat Rich Vaculik, taking his his record to 8-1 and his UFC record to 2-1. Louis, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, bro.
My pleasure. Congratulations on another impressive UFC victory.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Now, you were brought in as a late replacement. How much notice did you have for your fight?
I had maybe 13 days to make weight. So about 2 weeks notice.
So how did you have to change your training, and how much weight did you need to cut to make weight?
I had to cut around 30 pounds. There was no real change in training. I train year round, so I was pretty ready cardio wise. I just had to make the weight. That was the biggest issue.
Did you feel that cutting that much weight might affect you in the later rounds?
Not really. I'm pretty young and I have really good cardio. So, like at this stage in my career, the late notice weight cuts aren't really affecting me, but it could later.
What was it like for you while facing Australia? What was it like for you fighting an Australian fighter in Australia, so being the away?
It was pretty crazy. I could tell it was pretty one-sided. I think they were booing me during the introductions and stuff. But I mean, like that's how it is wherever you go. You know, it's always like that. You know, if you're fighting a guy in their hometown, it's always you're fighting. You're not just fighting them. You're fighting the crowd too, and it's something I'm used to. I've had to do it a few times before.
Now
It's not that
you're
big
a
a
very
deal.
well-rounded fighter. What was your game plan going into the fight?
Um, my game plan was to try to knock him out. I honestly really wanted my first like knockout, and I got it, so
Now,
I'm
in
pretty
the
happy
opening
with
round, you
that.
were both landing on the feet. Richie landed a takedown, but you were able to reverse position on the ground. How did you feel the first round went?
Yeah. I thought he probably took it. Like I said, it's his hometown. You gotta like beat the guy definitively. I did think that I think I rocked him in the first with a left hook right on his temple. I had him wobbling, so maybe one judge might have gave me that round just off the
Now,
damage, but I'm not
after the
sure.
second round, a lot of media outlets scored the opening 2 rounds for Richie. Did you and your corner feel you needed a finish going into the final round?
Yeah, we felt that I needed to finish, especially it being on like I said, in his hometown and stuff. I really felt that I needed to finish to win. So that's what I did. My corner was telling me to go out there, finish, and
It was such
I did my
an
best to
amazing
do so.
finish at the start of the third round. Can you talk us through the finish?
Yeah, well, when we were looking him up, we noticed that he throws really wide. So what we were doing was I was using the straight kick and straight punches up the middle, trying to land first. We both threw. Well, I threw a hook, and then we re-squared, and then I kept my lead hand low, and it was actually hiding my foot behind his, or it was hiding my foot from his line of sight. My foot was kind of behind my hand the way he was looking at it, so he wouldn't be able to see it. So when I flicked my hand up and my foot was underneath it, he couldn't see my
What
leg
was it
coming
like
up
to land
until it
that
was too
kick? 'Cause
late.
I mean, you couldn't have timed it any better.
It was an amazing feeling. Like I was practicing that kick all week. You can ask any of the guys that we were sharing the locker room with. We were warming up with that. All week I was working on that kick, and to
I
have it
haven't done any
land like that
research
was
on this, but
amazing.
going from memory, and I've watched a lot of fights, I'm pretty sure that's the first side kick finish in the UFC. Is that have you been? Is that been confirmed? Is that right?
I think everyone's been saying that. I'm not 100% sure if it's correct, but
Yeah,
that's what a
I've seen
lot
a
of
lot of
people have been
kicks.
saying, so I think
We've
it
seen all
might
sorts
be.
of crazy kicks, but I don't think we've ever seen a side kick finish. It was unbelievable. Now, this event broke a record of 11 finishes on the card. What was it like to be part of a record-breaking event?
Oh, I feel like I made history twice. One for the first side kick knockout and one for the most finishes. So it's a really good feeling to
Now,
have
on
that
top of
kind of
it, on a
place
night
in
of
UFC
great
history.
finishes, you were awarded a 50k bonus. Were you surprised to get the bonus?
Yeah. Honestly, right after the fight, I thought for sure I was gonna get a bonus, maybe even two, because that fight was like, I don't care what anybody says. I think that that was a really really good fight, and we were like a potential fight of the night candidate as well. But just then the way the fight started going, it was just finish after finish after finish, and after a while, like by the end of it, I was like, oh my god, I might not get a bonus. I went from hoping for two bonuses to just
Now,
like praying
it's a
for
known fact
one.
there isn't a lot of money in the sport until you reach the top. So, what kind of impact does this type of bonus have on you?
It's life changing. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know what else to say. I'm gonna be pretty financially comfortable for a little while, and it's a great feeling. I
Uh,
just I hope I don't get
Now, any
taxed too
injuries from
much.
the fight, and ideally, when would you like to get back into the octagon?
Honestly, I would like to get back in really soon. It might sound weird, but I'm almost over talking about the kick already. Like, I've been having to talk about it so much. It's like I'm already like almost over it, and I want to fight again. I want a new highlight, but I gotta get my nose looked at and see what I'm gonna do about that. And if
I can see
everything
obviously a little
is
cut
all
on your
good, I'd
nose.
like to
Is it
fight
more
as
than a
soon as
cut?
possible.
Have you broke your nose or? Yeah, I can see it.
I'm honestly not sure. I was gonna go today to get it looked at. but I can breathe through it. So I'm not
Yeah,
sure
that's
how
probably a
bad
good
it is,
idea. Now,
but I just
you're
want to
now
get it
2-1
looked
in
at
the
to be
UFC.
safe.
Who would you like to fight next to continue to climb up the UFC flyweight ladder?
Honestly, I haven't thought it through very much. Pretty much willing to fight anybody. I leave it up to my managers and my coaches to make up those
Well,
decisions for me,
congratulations
and I
on,
just
on,
show up
on
to
an
fight.
impressive victory and one of the best stoppages, and thank you very much for giving me your time today. Before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to shout
Thank
outs.
you
Is
for
there anyone
having
you
me,
want to
Rick.
thank? And also mention your Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, yeah, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Last Samurai UFC. I would just like to thank my striking coach, Charles Kipili. He's been working on my striking ever since I got into MMA, and he was telling me the whole time to land that kick and planning it out with me. So I'd really like to thank him for that. Um, I'd like to thank my jiu-jitsu coach, Rylan Lazares. I'd like to thank Chris Rains at Fitness Rains. I'd like to thank all my Hawaii Elite MMA friends, family, teammates. Russell Doan, I'd really like to send a special thank you to him. He's one of my good friends. He's there through the whole process with me. Uh, Jason House, my
I look forward to seeing
manager.
you stepping again into the cage again,
My
Louis. Thank you very
parents.
much. I'm now joined by smiling Sam Alvey, who beat Dylan Andrews to take his record to 24-6 and his UFC record to 1-1. Sam, congratulations on your first UFC victory.
Thank you so much. Feels great. I worked really hard for this one, and I'm glad I came out with the big W at the end of it.
Now you are such an experienced fighter. What was it like to finally get that win in the UFC?
My first dream was to get into the UFC, and now my dream is to win in the UFC, which I've done. And I think my next win is I want to set the all-time win record in a single year for the UFC. And that's kind of the next goal, just win soon.
Now, of course, we first saw you on the big stage at Ultimate Fighter Season 16. Things, of course, didn't play out. You've gone away. You've had a lot of success in other promotions, especially MFC. What's it like to finally get back and get that call up back to the UFC?
I'm so blessed to have been called back. The show didn't go as I wanted it to. Excuse me. But after the show, I've been putting together a nice little streak for myself. That was my 8th fight this year. I won 7 of them. Or 7th fight of this year, and I won 6 of them. And I was really just doing everything I could to get that invite back.
Now, you're known for your stand-up, and Dylan Andrews is also known for his stand-up. What were your views on Dylan as a fighter?
I knew he was a tough guy. He was on The Ultimate Fighter too, just a season after me. And I had always claimed that if I would have waited a season, I would have won season 17. But I jumped the gun. I took on a season with a weight cut that was just too much for me. And that was kind of it. I choked in my season, but now I'm hoping to go back and get some wins over the cast of season 17.
Now, when the fight started, someone shouted something from the crowd, and both you and Dylan both smiled. What was shouted from the crowd?
Well, pardon my language, but what was shouted was, "Dylan, kick his dick off." And that kind of made us both chuckle. I then told Dylan while in the fight, he said, "Please don't kick me in the dick." And we had a good laugh about that as well. And you know what? The audience responded to us pretty well. It was a very unique situation, and I was so happy now that it's over that it happened. It's very memorable.
Now, Andrews is known for his aggressive striking. Were you surprised when he took you down?
I was surprised how he took me down. I'm very difficult to take down, and he made it look easy. He just went under like he had been practicing it. So I definitely have to keep working on that. I had spent a lot of time anticipating it being a clinch fight, him trying to take me down off the cage, a lot of clinch work, because that's how he does it in all of his fights. Other thing that caught me a little off guard was he came out and stayed southpaw. Most of his fights, he comes out orthodox, and he might switch a time or two. But here he came out southpaw and stayed southpaw, and until he took me down.
Now, after the takedown, you worked your way back to your feet, and then you ended the fight, it's fair to say, in spectacular fashion. Can you talk us through the end of the fight?
Oh, excuse me. Ooh, I'm still getting my lungs back after the fight. Yeah, it felt so nice getting the knockout. He was going for the big suplex, and move we practice all the time is just hook the leg and turn. I wasn't anticipating it to hurt him, but I was going to get on top. At least I thought I was, and it turned out I was right. But it was kind of a unique way to finish the fight too. All in all, the whole fight was kind of unique for me, from the audience interaction to the final knockout. But it was hopefully the fans loved it.
Yeah, I think with the whole card was absolutely fantastic. Now, as I just said, the card was an exciting card. It broke record. It was got most finishes in a UFC event. What was it like being a part of that card?
Oh, I was so honored. The Australian crowd was fantastic. It was the culture out there was just great too. And all week long, I got to look out my window and see the Sydney Opera House and the bridge, and we got to try just everything there are a lot of things that make Australia so unique. And I wasn't bitten by a shark, so that was pretty awesome as well.
Now, any injuries from the fight, and ideally, when would you like to get back into the octagon?
No real injuries from the fight, but the whole camp I was beaten up. I got a bunch of injuries during the camp I've been trying to hide, and this is kind of the part Dylan probably doesn't even know yet. I was doing my best to hide it. All last week I was sick as a dog. I got off the plane, and about 24 hours later I came down with a fever, and my head was congested, and my lungs were bleeding, and it was a really bad week. And even during the fight backstage, I was coughing up, little bits of me, and it was pretty rough. I'm happy the fight ended in the first, because I don't know how good my lungs would have been past that. So I'm hoping to take a week off, eat some good food, and then I get back at it. I'd love to fight early January. If they had a fight for me in December, I'd take it.
Now, after your first UFC win, who would you like to fight next?
You know what? There's the 185 division is so stacked. I saw Daniel Kelly. He's a Australian boy. He had a great fight. I got to talk to him backstage a little bit, and I would be honored to fight him. I'd love to take his win streak. I think he's got 7 in a row now. I only got to 5 wins in a row in my professional career, so I'd love to put an end to his win streak. But honestly, I'd be willing to fight anyone. As I said earlier, big goal is I want to go through and I want to start beating everyone that was on season 17. And so maybe I'll get my opportunity there.
Well, congratulations on your win, Sam, and thanks again for coming back onto my show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on, sir.
Before we let you go, Sam, I'd just like to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. So anybody you want to thank, and also let listeners know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
Yeah, well, my Twitter is @SmilingSam. I do my very best to get back to everyone that tweets. So if you follow me, say hi, I'll say hi back. At least I usually do. I got to thank my team. It's the best team in the world, Team Quest here in Southern California. If anyone out there is thinking about becoming a fighter or is already a fighter and wants to join one of the best teams in the world, come on out. We've probably got a place for you to stay even. My beautiful wife, couldn't do this without her. She runs my corner. She helps run my camp, and she runs my household. My babies are a handful, and she just takes care of them like it's nothing. All going to school full time. It's pretty neat. And thank the fans. Thank you all for putting up with me. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I'll get to see you all again.
Well, I look forward to seeing you back in the cage again, Sam.
Thank you very much, sir.
I am now joined by Daniel Kelly. He's coming off a win over Luke Zachrich to take his record to 8-0, but more impressively win his UFC debut, taking his UFC record to 1-0. Daniel, thank you very much for joining me. Congratulations on winning your UFC debut.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, you've been on a great run. Obviously, you're undefeated. You put a hell of a winning streak together. What was it like to make your UFC debut in Australia?
It Oh, it was awesome. I was very nervous. Look, I don't really consider myself undefeated. I lost in Tough Nations in the house, so even though that doesn't go on my official record, I don't consider myself undefeated at all. So that's why winning my UFC, I suppose the official UFC debut, is a little bit sweeter after the disappointment of the house.
Yeah, I know Tough Nations didn't play out the way you would have hoped, of course, but what's it like to finally get your opportunity to actually fight, at the big stage, fight in the UFC?
Oh, it was awesome, and the best thing is I got to show what I wanted to show. In the house I didn't get that opportunity, and after this fight, I feel like I can fight at this level, and it's where I belong fighting.
Now, you were facing a very tough opponent in Luke Zachrich, who had a lot more MMA experience than you, including a win in the UFC. What was your views on him as an opponent?
Look, we did a lot of study. He had good boxing. He's had pro boxing experience. He's a brown belt in BJJ. We'd watched his last win. He fought a Brazilian guy who was a BJJ world champion, I believe. So we knew we'd try and box and steer clear of the clinch and avoid a takedown. So he tried to do exactly what we thought he'd do, which is good.
Now, you, of course, are known for your judo, but the fight looked very even on the feet. How did you feel in the stand-up?
Fantastic. His punches didn't bother me at all. I've been working really hard on my stand-up game. I mean, obviously, I came to it late doing the striking stuff, but I felt really comfortable standing with him, so I was happy with that.
Now, most of your wins have come from submissions. Once you took him down, how confident were you that you would get the finish?
As soon as I took him down, he threw his legs up for an armbar, and as soon as I passed and started hitting him, I went, okay, I'm in a good spot here. And then the Kimura sequence opened up really, really well for me. So I wasn't sure. I knew if I was on top, I'd be in a strong position because that's where I'm comfortable. And just played out my way.
Now, you won via Kimura, as you stated there. Can you talk us through the end of the fight?
He threw his legs up for an armbar. I spun to the side, one side, did some ground and pound, then passed to half guard, and his arm was out. So I tacked the arm for the Kimura straight away and went to a straight armbar. And then, as he tried to bring his arm back in towards his body, he kind of gave up half guard, and I was able to scoot around to the top. And then once I had my knees either side of him and he was on his side, I was confident I could finish from there.
It was a beautiful finish, and it looked like a painful move. I mean, Kimura's a painful move anyway. Now, this was a record-breaking event with 11 finishes. What was it like to be part of such a great card?
Oh, fantastic! I mean, I had some training partners who fought. My family was there. It was good to see quite a few of the Aussies do well. It was a fantastic event to be part of. It was just mind-blowing.
Yeah, I spoke to Jake earlier on in the week as well. He's also going to be on the show, Jake Matthews, and he was absolutely buzzing as well. It was a fantastic card. Now, any injuries, and ideally, when would you like to get back into the cage?
I'm injury free. I hope to fight again either late February, late March, but we've got to wait and see when the UFC want me again.
Now, earlier on in the week, I spoke to another middleweight on the card who was impressed with your performance and said it would be an honour to compete against you, as it would be a good test for him. Now, when he was saying this, he wasn't saying it in a disrespectful way, he was saying it in a respectful way, and that was smiling Sam Alvey. Is that a fight you'd be interested in?
Yeah, sure, whatever they like. So he actually said he was interested in fighting me. Oh, that'd be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I spoke to him, but he didn't say it disrespectfully. He was saying it'd be a good test because he'd like to. He said you've got a better winning streak than him. He'd like to break that streak, and he just thinks it'd be a really good test for him.
Oh, he's 1-1 in the UFC now. Yeah, just beat Dylan, and he lost a decision to a British guy.
Tom Watson.
Tom. Yeah, who did a lot of leg kicks on him. So, yeah, look, he seems like a really nice guy. Sam, we saw him around the hotel. He was there with his family. So, look, whatever the UFC want me to do. I mean, I'd love to come over your side of the world and fight as well. I mean, my wife's Hungarian, so it'd be nice to go and go over there. I've got a lot of friends in England as well from all my years of judo. But yeah, whatever the UFC want, I don't mind.
I was going to say actually, apart from Alvey, do you have your eye on anybody? But you just wait to see what the UFC have got to offer.
Yeah, I mean, where I'd like to fight and when. I mean, I'd love to fight in Europe, late February, late March. But whatever the UFC want, I'm happy. That Alvey Sam would be a hard match. I mean, it's Southpaw versus Southpaw, but I don't mind.
I know, going off rumours for Europe, I know we've got Sweden in January and London in February. So do you think the London February one would interest you?
Oh, absolutely! I'd love to. Like I said, I've got a lot of friends in England. There's a big judo base over in England as well, so I think I'd get a bit of support as well. Unless, of course, I was fighting another Englishman, which would probably outweigh that. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming and giving me your time today. And congratulations on not just winning the UFC debut, but winning it in such impressive fashion as well.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Before we let you go, Daniel, I'd just like to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Is there anyone you'd like to thank? And also let the listeners know about your Facebook and your Twitter.
Absolutely. My Twitter's Dan Kelly Judo. Also, Facebook is Daniel Kelly Athlete page. Shout out, obviously, to my wife, all my coaches, training partners, Resilience Training Centre, my gym. It's been awesome. It was a great lead up, and hopefully it can continue on.
I can't wait till you get back in the cage again, Daniel.
No worries. Thank you very much.
I'm now joined by Anthony Perosh. Anthony beat Guto Inocente via round 1 submission rear naked choke, taking his record to 15-8 and his UFC record to 5-5. Anthony, thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Congratulations on yet another impressive UFC victory.
Yeah, thanks very much. This one, it's always hard coming off a loss, and and then I had an injury about middle of the year. I had to pull out a fight, so I trained hard for this one and changed a few things. So it was great to show off a little bit and show my skills and get the win.
Now, you hadn't fought in Sydney since 2012. What was it like being back fighting in your hometown?
Oh, it was great. It's indescribable. It's I was born and bred in Sydney, and to have all my family and friends and students there, it's fantastic.
Now, you were facing Guto Inocente, who had one previous UFC fight, which was at heavyweight. What were your views on him as an opponent?
I didn't know too much about him. I knew he was a very talented kickboxer, and he's young and athletic, and he was coming off a loss too, so I knew he'd be hungry. But so pretty much just going into it, I knew I'd be fighting a kickboxer who wanted to keep it standing. So that's kind of what happened.
Now, you worked your way in, you was able to take him down. Once you'd taken him down, how confident were you that you would get the finish?
I've made a mistake before of celebrating too early. When I get somebody down and get in a dominant position, and I'm just from like now when I get someone down, it's not over until the guy taps. So I was just I was relentless and made sure he tried to escape, but I made sure I shut it all down and use my position and ground and pound and to get that choke.
Now, at one time it looked like you might go for an arm triangle choke, but you were able to secure a rear naked choke instead. Talk us through the end of the fight.
Yeah, he was the arm triangle was there at the start, but as soon as I locked that in, he went flat on his back, which is the the correct escape, and I lost that arm. But then the mount position is my favorite to do ground and pound. So I knew that if he didn't turn, like usually when I get on mount, punch and elbow a lot, and if they don't turn to their stomach, the referee's gonna stop the match from strike. So after a lot of punches, he turned to his stomach, and I got his back and stretched him out. And I think by that time, with a couple more punches, he lifted his chin up a little bit, and much easier to sneak the choke in.
Now, this was a record-breaking event with 11 finishes. What was it like for you being part of such a great card, but also with it being in your hometown as well?
Yeah, it was great, and not only that, but I think there were 8 Aussies on the card, and 5 of us got the win as well. So more than half. So it's great for Australian MMA. It's really the kick in the ass that we needed down here. So hopefully next time we can better it again.
We've seen quite a few Aussies come in now to the UFC. A lot of them have come in off the back of course, the Ultimate Fighter Nations, where they face Canada. Do you kind of feel like you've helped lead the way? Because you're one of the leading Australian fighters in the UFC.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And now, they're already talking about the next tough as well. Australia, New Zealand, which will bring out even more fighters. And excuse me, just a little bit sick post-fight. But yeah, look, the more opportunity Australians get to fight, then the more chance we get to get in the UFC and build a team. And bigger the team is there's more chances of more wins, and then title fights, and then hopefully eventually crown first Australian champion.
Now you look solid in this fight. How pleased were you with your performance?
Yeah, look, I did all of my favourite techniques. If I wrote it down, I couldn't write it any better. I did my favourite strikes and favourite takedown and favourite pass and favourite finish. So, I was really happy with how it all went. But even then, I saw a couple of mistakes that I did, and I'm going to work on that for the next fight.
How did you feel after the fight? Do you have any injuries? And ideally, when would you like to get back into the octagon?
No, 0 injuries. I don't think he connected with me once, so no bruises, no scratches. All the joints are okay, and so it's always a bonus. You get the win, and then you're able to, I guess, go Monday and train again if you like. And then I'm thinking I'd probably like the rest of the year off just to concentrate on my teaching and my students, because they've got a lot of comps on the rest of the year, so I just concentrate on that and get back like training for myself after the New Year. So maybe fight say March, April.
Now after picking up yet another UFC win, any ideas on who you'd like to face next?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
After picking up yet another UFC win, any ideas on who you would like to face next?
I was looking around. Like, I think I'm ranked around just outside the top 15 somewhere. So I think in one of my post interviews, I said I'd like to fight Fabio Maldonado. I think he's ranked a couple of spots above me, so I think that'd be a good match.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Anthony. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on another impressive UFC victory.
Oh, thank you.
Before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Anyone you want to thank, any sponsors, and also let the listeners know about your Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah, sure. Look, big thanks. I went to Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn's gym in Albuquerque for this camp, so big thanks to them for making me feel welcome and for coaching me. Really appreciate it, and they kind of changed my outlook and game a little bit. And thanks to my Aussie coaches, Steve Rudick, Sean Sullivan, and Dennis Roberts for helping me out, and of course all my family and friends and students. And finally my sponsors too for the fight Venom fight gear and Booster fight gear and training masks. Thanks very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure having the chance to speak to you, Anthony, and I think you versus Fabio Maldonado would be an excellent fight.
Great, thank you.
I'm now joined by Jake Matthews, who's coming off his second UFC victory, beating Vagner Rocha, taking his overall record to 8-0 and his UFC record to 2-0. Thanks for joining me, Jake, and congratulations on your second UFC victory.
No worries, right? Thanks for having me.
Now, first thing then, what was it like to be fighting for the UFC in Australia?
It was massive for me, you know. I have had a lot of my fights in Australia before, a lot of my professional fights, but for it to be in Australia, in the UFC, you know, in front of a crowd like that full of Australians, it was just another level, and yeah, it was definitely my biggest and favourite fight to date.
Now, after such an impressive UFC debut, did you feel more pressure going into this fight?
No, not at all. I don't feel pressure. I said in the post-fight press conference, you know, it doesn't matter how much, you know, expectation people put on me. It's never gonna exceed how much expectation I put on myself. So, you know, so the pressure doesn't bother me. And you know, I had a lot of, you know, I was like a 4-1 favourite, fighting in Australia at home against a foreigner. So everyone expected me to win. But you know, as long as I go out there and give 100%, whatever happens at the end of the day, I'm gonna be happy. So, yeah, so I don't feel the pressure.
Now, Rocha is known to be very tough, and he went 3 rounds with one of the best lightweights in the world in Donald Cerrone. What were your views on him as an opponent?
Yeah, well, that was one of the main fights that I watched of Roach's against Cerrone. That was sort of, you know, he went the distance with Donald Cerrone. Like you said, he's one of the best in the world. He's fighting for a title next. So I guess in a way I did something that Donald Cerrone couldn't. Wagner said that he was coming to this fight with me more prepared and in better shape than his last stint in the UFC. So I think I really made a statement by going out there and beating Wagner. Yeah, so you know, like he had more experience. It was a step up for me. My debut was against someone else who was making their debut. So you know, so now I fought someone who's had a stint in the UFC before, won a fight in the UFC, and now from here just keep stepping up and fighting more experienced guys.
Now, you're a very well-rounded fighter. So what was your game plan going into the fight?
The game plan, I was wary of Wagner's ground game. He's a jiu-jitsu world champion, second degree black belt. You know, I'm confident in my wrestling and my ground game, but at the same time, I'm only a purple belt, so you know, I wasn't too keen on going to the ground with him. But at the same time, I wasn't scared. You know, I think when you start panicking and start worrying about what they're going to do to you, that's when they're going to catch you. So, you know, I worked a lot of defense and how to get up to my feet. So I was confident if it went down to the ground, I could use my strength and get back up. But you know, the game plan was to go in there and just stand up with him. Go for the knockout, and then you know at the end of each round, if it did go that far, the last 20 seconds, go for the takedown, get some points, lay some ground and pound on him because in 20 seconds he's not really going to have enough time to get a submission. You know, and I knew if I had have rocked him because it's MMA, it's not jiu-jitsu at the end of the day. So if someone gets rocked, it's hard to defend submissions. But the game plan was to go in there, stay away from his ground, and just stand up with him.
Now, round 1 was very close. Did you feel you did enough to win the first round?
Oh yeah, I definitely won that first round. Just landed more strikes, more aggressive. You know, went for the takedown. The first round, I was a little bit not hesitant, but I was just feeling it out at the first round because some fights he would come out and he'd shoot his opponent straight away and just continually keep shooting for the takedown. Other fights he'd stand up with guys who have better stand up with him, so we didn't know what to expect. So first round just felt it out a little bit, and I knew that if the fight was going to go to the ground, it's because I took the fight to the ground. He wasn't going to try and take me down. I think with my footwork, my movement, my level changes, he didn't have the chance to take me down. You know, the option for the shoot wasn't even there. So then I just come out the second round and stepped it up a notch. I didn't want to leap in too fast with things like the Superman punch in the first round because I wasn't sure, like I said, if he was going to shoot. Second round, I knew he wasn't going to shoot on me, so I knew I could use those punches, and it ended up landing.
Now, talking about that, in the second round, you finished the fight in spectacular fashion. Starting with the Superman punch, can you talk us through the finish?
Yeah, well, like I said, I stepped up second round. I knew all I had to do was land one of my punches, and it was going to be over. I've never actually practiced a Superman punch before. I've never done one in a fight before. I was sort of just, you know, I saw his hands were riding low, and every time I went to close the distance quickly, he'd move back. So I thought I needed to close the distance quick, and I thought, a Superman punch might work. So I thought, why not? So I went for it and ended up landing. I could feel we sort of clinched up for a split second. I could feel that he was really weak because he'd been rocked. So I just pushed him to the ground, and I was just going to go for the TKO finish, keep the strikes up, and off one of my punches, it just wrapped under his neck. So I thought I might as well just lock it up. Because once a rear naked's locked up, doesn't matter how what level it is in jiu-jitsu. Once it's locked up, it's on. And he tried to escape out of it. And I knew once he tried to escape and turned to his knees, I knew it was on. But I knew he wasn't going to tap either, so I knew I had to put every ounce of strength into it. Then I knew I had it when I heard my corner started cheering, so that's when I knew I had the fight won.
What was it like to become the first fighter to submit Rocha?
I think it makes a big statement. I've gone 2 fights in the UFC now, two submission victories. And one against a second-degree black belt who's a world champion. So, I like my stand-up. I like to stand up with people, go for knockouts. So I think now I made a statement, and hopefully, fighters respect my ground game more. So they're going to be a bit more hesitant in shooting me, and that's going to make for good stand-up fights. So I just want to get people. I want people to see that I've got the good ground game. So the fighters don't want to go to the ground with me, and we just stand up and bang it out, and I can initiate takedowns. So that's my aim for future fights.
A UFC record was broken with 11 finishes on the night. What was it like to be part of such a great card?
It was awesome. That was the best Australian UFC card ever. Like you said, we had 11 fights on the night, 11 finishes. The Aussies, we went 5 for 3. With Aussie fighters, so the Aussies showed that we're stepping up, and we had the most Aussie fighters ever on a UFC card. So it was a pretty historic event, and it was really good to be a part of it.
Any injuries? When would you like to get in and compete again?
No injuries. I put up good, so I'm looking to get in there real soon. I mentioned after the fight that I would like to get on the Boston card. I'm a big fan of Conor McGregor. So I'd like to get on the Boston card, if I could. If not, something soon after. I'd just like to get a quick one in. I'm feeling good. I just want to keep my fitness up and just, flow on from my last training camp. Just do a back-to-back training camp. Have this week to rest up a little bit, and then get straight back into it. Get straight back in the octagon again.
You're now 2-0 in the UFC, of course. You're in a stacked lightweight division. Any ideas on who you'd like to face next? I did my research a little bit, and I did call out Joe Ellenberger, Jake Ellenberger's brother. Not for any specific reason. I just think it would make for a really good fight. Joe's got the big name behind him. His brother's a top 10 fighter, so he's got that big name behind him. I just sort of make for a good fight. But it turns out he's got a fight in late December, so I don't think that would happen anytime soon. But hopefully we can get that fight going sometime next year. Well, thank you for your time, Jake, and congratulations on another impressive win.
No worries, Ray. Thank you.
Before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. So anyone you want to thank, and also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
Yeah, as always, I'd like to thank my dad, of course. He's my head coach. He's been there for my first amateur fight all the way through. So it's just the beginning for us. A big factor in my last 2 fights has been Mark Edmondson. He's sort of my secret weapon, my sports psychologist, so he's getting my mindset right. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Sonic and Viking Loaders, and of course, Sierra Palista Jiu-Jitsu. I got to show off some good jiu-jitsu in that fight, so just like to thank Carlos Vieira at Sierra Palista and all the boys that helped me train for this fight.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Jake. I look forward to seeing you step back in the octagon again.
Take care, mate.
Well, I'm sure you'll all agree there were some great guests there and some great interviews. Thank you for everyone who's took the time to listen to this. I'm going to keep continuing to get interviews for you on a regular basis. If you'd like more post-fight interviews with me, with UFC fighters, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is MMA Mental. You can also follow me on Twitter, at MMA Mental, or you can add me on Facebook, that's just Ray Thompson. I've got an MMA Mental Facebook fan page as well. Thanks for everyone listening. For everyone who's listening, I'll look to try and get some winners off the next event, which will be UFC 180.